Before traveling to Singapore for the North Korean summit, the president made a stop in Canada for a meeting of the G7. While he was there, he struck an adversarial posture on trade matters, much to the annoyance of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The press, of course, would never dare root for America or an American in an international dispute. Of course not. So they quickly condemned the president's behavior. They warned that he may have hurt the feelings of the other leaders who are apparently very fragile. Watch.
Donald Trump has insulted Justin Trudeau of Canada, called him weak, attacking our allies, sort of ridiculing them.
It's an extraordinary photo, and it doesn't make President Trump look very good. And that may be one reason why he's lashing out at Germany now.
Insulting Germany, insulting Justin Trudeau, calling everybody by first names, by the way, too, which is sort of undiplomatic.
I don't know if he is threatened by Justin Trudeau being younger. I have no idea.
Is it his youth? Is it the fact that I'm told he's a pretty good-looking guy?
Richard Goodstein advised both Bill and Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. He joins us now. Richard, by the way, I should tell our viewers that the motorcade we just saw passing was that of Kim Jong Un. There it is right there. So thanks a lot for coming on tonight. Sure. So the president tweeted out that Canada erects massive tariffs against American dairy, among other things. 270% on milk. Turns out it's almost 300% on butter. That's true. And so why would it be somehow wrong for an American president to stand up for an American industry in an international meeting?
Right. You know, I've been listening to your coverage all night, of course, and, you know, this all makes sense if you believe that up is down and down is up. I mean, that no preparation for a meeting like this one is good, and knowing what drives a leader or a country is somehow a fool's errand and a waste of time that lesser people do. Look, it only makes sense, Tucker, to criticize our allies and elevate dictators like Putin, or even now to call Kim Jong Un a honorable man. This is crazy, right? And to walk away.
Okay, so
two hours after he said, "I'm committed to something," to say, I don't want to do it. That's not how the United States can conduct ourselves and have anybody, friend or foe alike, believe what we say.
So here's what, look, here's what I think the president does understand, and I agree with you. He's not a detail man. But he understands that leaders act in their own interest. They don't act out of pique or hurt feelings. They act out of what they think is good for them and the countries they lead. And so if we could just go back very quickly to the G7, then I do want to address what you said about North Korea. Why did it infuriate American liberals when the president stood up for American interests? And of course, the answer is because they don't like America. But I want to hear your version of that answer.
Yeah, of course, that's silly. Look, it infuriated everybody,
silly.
Not
it's
just
demonstrable
liberals.
In everything they say.
There are, if you gave a truth serum to every Republican in the Senate and House, a huge percentage of them would say they're embarrassed to have a president of the United States call our allies
I'm sure they
the
are.
kind of names.
But that means nothing to me. You always,
I understand it means nothing to you.
Because I don't care what some politician thinks. I'm interested in the principle, and that is, why is it wrong for an American leader to stand up for American interests? There are, despite NAFTA, enormous tariffs against certain American exports. That's why we have a trade deficit with Canada.
He should stand up for American interests.
The president said that, and American liberals are like, oh, you're being mean to Justin Trudeau. He's so hunky. Stop.
No. Where people, again, it wasn't just liberals. What they reacted to is Justin Trudeau said before that press conference at the end of the G7, as he did afterwards, that he too was going to stand up and retaliate against these unfair tariffs on aluminum and steel, right? That's all he said. So somehow that became the thing that Trump was going to, put his pick in the ground about and walk away from the very deal that he agreed to hours before. If the United States president can't be trusted to stand by his word, what then? I mean, how in the world can Kim Jong Un?
Because we've had, wait, hold on, slow down. We've had a succession of presidents for my entire lifetime. Almost all of whom were well respected and sort of, all the chin tuggers thought they were great. They were very thoughtful. And they allowed this country to get shafted. They allowed China into the WTO and lost millions of American jobs. Millions. We've never recovered from that. We have not recovered. And yet the people who did that, George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, are considered heroes and statesmen. I'm sort of not. I'm confused by the standards by which you're judging leaders. Shouldn't we judge leaders by how they do for their people?
Yeah, of course. Look, we've lost most of the jobs we've lost to automation. The same reason we've lost coal industry jobs.
That's not true.
I'm not. Look,
that's not true.
True
we
that
lost
there are
the entrance into the WTO. Destroyed American manufacturing.
Yeah, I think China has not lived up to its commitments in the WTO. There will be no dispute from me or, frankly, most other people about whether China is...
But nobody says anything about it. And all the Morning Joe is totally cool with that. As long as you just sort of let it happen and don't make a fuss, it's totally fine. You're one of us. You probably are on the CFR. But the second somebody says anything about it, oh, you're totally irresponsible. Why shouldn't an American leader stand up for America? Really simple question.
The problem is they should, but China is the problem as regards, say, aluminum and steel, not Canada. That's the problem, and not Japan and not France. And yet, the president seems perfectly hunky-dory to look the other way when it comes to ZTE and these Chinese behemoths that are basically insinuating themselves into U.S. technology, and somehow or other it's Canada that becomes the enemy as regards trade. We've got stuff moving back and forth.
Look, I don't think Canada is the enemy. I just think it's an acknowledgement that each country has its own set of interests, and it pursues those. And in some cases, they're different from ours, and we should push back. Let me ask you, though, of course, the press, being stupid, reduces everything to the personal. So Trudeau is mad at Trump. Trump is mad at Trudeau. At this exact moment, the president of South Africa, who is an open and avowed racist, who has pledged to take people's land away based on their skin color, I think you'd agree that meets the definition of racism, was with Trudeau, and Trudeau issued this long statement about how great he is. Ramaphosa, you're fantastic, wonderful to have you here. Do you find it a little striking that the president of South Africa is accorded more respect than our own, not just by Trudeau, but by American liberals? Do you think it's weird?
That is weird. What's weirder is having the United States president stand up for Russia after they invade Crimea, after they engage in war crimes, after they meddle in the U.S. elections to help him, that they want to elevate Angela Merkel looking at Russians, an economy that's as small as Spain, to the G7. As it was said in some of these tweets over the weekend, Angela Merkel looking at Trump and seeming to say, what does Putin have on you? We can help you. Just let us know. Because that's the only explanation
have on
for
you.
Trump's behavior.
Do you think, I mean, Russia, why is Russia, and this is a sincere question, at the center of the liberal mind? If you consider all the countries around the world that are murdering minority groups within their borders, invading other countries, posing a nuclear threat to our country, exporting terror, Russia is not even close to the top of the list of threats to the United States. And yet, in the view of liberals, it's all about Russia. I mean, I honestly think it's a psychiatric disorder, but maybe there's another explanation.
Well, unless you can include Donald Trump as the liberal mind, he's the one who's talking about bringing Russia back into the G7. He's the one who's talking about
why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Because Russia violated human rights abroad? Is that what you're saying? Like, why wouldn't? When he's meeting with the president of North Korea, speaking of human rights violations, who maintains gulags where hundreds of thousands of families languish and die, but we're meeting with him anyway. Why wouldn't you want to meet with your opponents, with your adversaries? Liberals always used to argue that. And now bringing Russia into the G7 is like immoral for some reason? I'm totally confused.
Well, remember, it used to be the G8. Russia was in it until it attacked another country.
Until recently.
Right, until it basically took over territory of another country. Again, I know you don't care who's a Republican senator or congressman.
Around the world every day.
Well, the fact is, we don't honor that. We basically, I think
because China invaded Tibet.
Yeah.
China is rounding up Muslims right now and putting them in concentration camps. But we put them into the WTO and allowed them to destroy our economy.
Right.
Half the population of Washington, D.C. takes money from them. As you know, every think tank, every lobbying organization, all take money from the communist government of China, which is invading its neighbors, oppressing minority groups, and nobody says anything about it, and spying on us. Why do you think that is? Why does nobody say anything? It's kind of weird, isn't it?
I think China should be called out for every transgression that it engages in. It just seems weird.
So how about anyone in D.C. taking Chinese money? Should they be indicted? I mean, don't you think? I mean, given what they're doing?
You asked what was weird and what was in the liberal mind, and I'm saying is for Donald Trump to stand up time after time after time for Russia seems bizarre, unexplainable, but for the fact that there's something.
I mean, honestly, who cares? By the way, you're single-handedly making me pro-Russia. I was ambivalent on the subject at first, and now I'm like, they must be pretty great if the left hates them this much. I'm trying not to let myself get on that path.
I don't think it's just a left.
No, it's a holdover. Low IQ Republicans in D.C. feel the same way. I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
But it's just so disconnected from the reality of the modern world, where Russia, again, is not even in the top tier of threats to the United States. It's almost as if liberals are intentionally moving attention away from the real threats to an irrelevant place like Russia.
Here's a real threat.
Could that be?
Here's a real threat. Undermining the sanctity of our democracy is a very real threat. And the Republicans and Democrats on the Senate Intelligence Committee, well, the Senate Intelligence Committee, in a bipartisan way, said the Russians meddled to help Trump. That is a absolute blow to our democracy, whether you like it or not.
Let me ask you, do you think, sincerely, do you think Russia did more to undermine the legitimacy of our elections than those politicians who've argued against voter ID laws, which make it impossible to detect voter fraud, which is widespread, and they systematically abet voter fraud? So do you think Russia, Vladimir Putin, or the ACLU has further undermined the sanctity of our elections?
So I think if you had a rank order between Russia, Comey, voter suppression, I think those three are probably pretty high on the list of what tilted the election in Trump's way, since you're asking me. Yes, that's what I think happened. And I think, actually, as I said to you before, there wouldn't be billions of dollars spent on ads on Fox News if somebody out there didn't think that that would influence people's opinions. And that's exactly what the Russians did, reaching through Facebook 126 million, only 135
people
million
never
voted.
would. I think you're onto something here. People never would have voted for Trump unless Vladimir Putin told them to. And
it's slightly more complicated, maybe for another time.
Richard, good, Steve. I don't think it's more complicated. I think it's exactly what happened. Great to see you.
Sure.
We're going to take a quick break.